I'm a member of several D&D groups on Facebook because I am, and in one of them I often see people posting about player versus player situations and how it makes the whole game fall apart. I found one of these posts to be very interesting. In that case, they had an NPC in their game who broke They had an NPC in their game who broke the ranger player's bow. This made the ranger player really angry and she wanted to kill the NPC. The ranger tried to conspire with the rogue and kill the NPC. The rogue, however, likes this NPC and he has now decided to poison and kill the ranger player. To that I say, what? First of all, what kind of a character kills an NPC because they broke her bow? I mean, couldn't they buy another bow? Also, I get it, it's the rogue player's prerogative whether they want to help the ranger to kill the NPC or not. However, what kind of a player tries to poison and kill their fellow player's character? Isn't it just a little too much to drop 3 bodies over an unremarkable bow? I can't take this seriously. I can't believe this is actually happening. I have to admit, this is one of the strangest player versus player stories that I have heard. And it got me thinking, what is a good player versus player story? How can it work? And why does it mostly fall apart? Let me first tell you a story about how I tried to do this and had an epic fail. This was 3 years ago and I was watching dice camera action and I got inspired by the Waffle Crew Civil War. I was DMing for my coworkers and one of them was playing an evil Dragonborn wizard. The Dragonborn wizard in one of her dreams had a god or someone tell her that she needs to do some evil deed in order to increase her power. The Dragonborn PC decided to go about doing this by killing one of the player characters. The player character who was about to have their character murdered was not privy to this and I thought this would be so dramatic. It will be awesome. It was not. Firstly, when the time came, the evil PC just declared, I want to kill this monk. So I decided, okay, you do not get an automatic surprise. You have to roll stealth and initiative. They failed their stealth and initiative. The other players rolled higher. They beat her to the punch and they captured her. The evil wizard never got to kill the monk. The wizard did not like that. She was really frustrated that she thought that I had told her that she needs to do this in order to gain more power, and now I was stopping her. Understandable frustration. The monk player, however, was really mad that her character suddenly got almost murdered out of the blue. Everyone got upset with everyone, the party split, and in the end we just had to retire 2 of the characters from that party, and those players rolled up new characters whose goals and alignments were more in line with the rest of the party. I thought about this situation a lot, and always came up with the answer, they're just bad players. If only they would play along and figure out a way to handle this, it would have been so epic, so dramatic, awesome. I was wrong. That was my first campaign. I had ideas, I was arrogant about my ideas, and I blamed everybody except myself. To be perfectly honest, it was my fault. This is not something that you, the DM, can force into existence. It never works and it leads to a lot of unhappiness and party splits. Let's move on to another story. In my friend Theron's game, I play an elf wizard. Very original. In one situation, we were trying to escape from an orc stronghold and my character's father was stranded in a different part of the dungeon. I said that I was not going to leave this stronghold without my father. The character had just met his estranged father after 130 odd years, and they were just beginning to repair their very fragile and broken relationship. There was no way I was going to let my father die in this dungeon. However, I knew what I was getting into. I knew that I could die in that situation, and I was 100% okay with losing my character in that situation because it was my choice, it was my agency, and I thought that is what the character would do. He would not have left his father to die in that dungeon. This led to some annoyance in the party. They didn't really want to save my character's father, but they also didn't want to leave my character out in the dungeon and escape. So one of the players declared that they would try to intimidate my wizard into abandoning his father and escaping with the rest of the party. Basically, their idea was that they were going to roll intimidation, I was going to roll something, whatever. If I failed, I would have to comply with that. This made me feel really helpless in that situation. I did not want to antagonize the player or let them down because I really love playing with them. We're still playing together, by the way, and now their character is one of my favorites. And in game, my character trusts their character a lot. But in that moment, I felt like I was losing my player agency. I was being bound to the results of a die roll, and I did not have control over what my character would do. I was about to get angry when I looked at my DM, Theron, and when I saw his expression, my anger was gone. I could tell that he was not going to let me down. He understood the predicament I was in, and he had a plan. He did brilliantly. He massaged the situation to a point where that die roll did not really matter. He notched up the tension a lot, and all worries forgotten, we were back in the collaborative mode and trying to figure out, oh my god, we're all gonna die, how do we get out of this? Good DMing. Compare these to another player conflict story 2 years later. My friend Jonathan's light domain cleric, who used to be very fire happy, not anymore, used to be, and tossed one of his reckless, careless fireballs and killed the rogue player's favorite horse, Horus. No. Before you go, Jonathan is a terrible player and you shouldn't play with him. No, he's a fantastic player and a brilliant tactician. His recklessness was in character. We all knew that's who his character is. We had been having fun and indulging with him and his character's motivations and ways of life until that point. This was not out of the blue. This is truly something that character would do. None of the players had any problems believing that this is reality. It's not trying to get a negative reaction from a player. It's not being murder hobo. So this horse roasting incident led to a short but a very important player conflict. The rogue was played by my friend and DM Theron, who I just mentioned, and the cleric was played by my friend Jonathan. Theron and Jonathan are brilliant DMs of their own right, and they understand how to create drama at the table, which makes my job a lot easier. They had talked to each other out of game and decided that this would lead to a little bit of a player conflict in game. You already see why this is much better, don't you? The conflict was optional. They both knew that the conflict was in character to create drama. The players were not actually upset at each other. So in the next session, when their interpersonal dilemma played out, it was great. It was a profound character development moment for Jonathan's character, Tezcacotl, a lizard folk cleric. It was very successful, and I, the DM, didn't really even have to do anything. So the lesson here is that as a DM, you can hope for dramatic situations and character conflicts, but you cannot force it. If you really want to implement it, don't blindside your players. Talk to them. 99% of the time, players will join in if they know that it's optional. They will even come up with cooler ideas about how to go about it. Pitch the idea and then give your players free rein. Do tell them that you would prefer, if you do prefer, that hopefully this conflict does not lead to player characters killing each other off. But even if it leads to that, if it's opt-in for the players and they have agreed to a situation like that, it's fine. It will work out. Why not? The other important lesson is to try to minimize players rolling against other players. If one of your players asks you that they want to insight check another player, I would recommend not letting them do that. Tell them that, hey, the player is here, talk to them, you can see their expressions, you know how they've played their characters, draw your own conclusions. Do not try to roll a die and look for an omniscient answer about how another player feels about their character. I think it's just unfair to them. Players would never like being beholden to a stupid dice roll and lose control of their character. This does not mean that your villain cannot cast Dominate Person on a player character. That is not what I mean. That is a different case, and we will talk about that in a later video. What I'm saying is avoid having players roll against other players in social interaction situations and force them to abide by whatever the dice said. The dice are not storytellers. They don't care about your feelings. They don't care about fun and enjoyment of the players. They have a very high tendency of ruining all of these things. Instead, just make them talk to each other. They are real people talking to each other face to face. They can judge, they can do their own real life insight check on the other player and figure out what they want or not. Let them draw their own conclusions. You don't need a game mechanic to interact with real life people, do you? I hope not. Anyway, you get my point. The choice, the agency belongs to the players. Don't take it away from them. If you pitch your idea to them and they're not on board, it's fine. Maybe in a different time, in a different campaign, you pitch the same idea to another couple of players and they are on board. It'll be dramatic, but it has to happen on your players' terms. There is one underlying implication for all of this, though. This can only work if the players and the DM trust each other. Not just player to DM and DM to player. The players among themselves need to trust each other. And trust requires a long time to build and nurture. Without trust, this is never going to work. So my advice is, if you are brand new to a group, that's probably not the time to try this. Like, you have to wait until you have built some trust with your fellow players within the group. Otherwise, it can lead to unhappiness and groups breaking up. I think we as DMs often fall into a trap. I have definitely fallen into this trap, that the players will only have fun if it's a surprise for them. This often leads to behaviors where the DMs tend to treat information as treasure. We'll talk about that in another video. But this idea that it is only fun when it is a surprise is not true. Often the players have a lot more fun when they know what they're getting into. And you will be surprised by how often your players surprise you. Because even though you know what's in store,
there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path.